Hey, hi everyone. My name is Bharatwaj. For those find it difficult, you can call me Brad, like the better version of Brad Pitt. Okay, cool. I head marketing at MoEngage for Australia, New Zealand, and several other countries. And in my conversation with senior leaders, be it marketing heads or product heads, or say founders or entrepreneurs, I hear keywords like budget optimization, consolidating data stack, single source of truth, and the gentleman who asked a question about metrics to measure. So these are things that come up quite often than others. And when we were brainstorming topics for the panel today, we came across an interesting study from Gartner, right? So before I go there, I want to ask a question to the audience today. How many of you, or let's put it this way, what percentage of marketing budget goes into technology or Martech stack? Can we take a guess with a raise of hands? 10 to 15%? 10 to 15%, we have one. 15 to 20? Yeah, I think it's the same issue with the clicker. It's fine. How many of you think the Martech spending or the total budget goes into technology is between 10 to 15%? Raise of hands. One gentleman again. Yeah, just next slide. Yeah. And anything, yeah, there you go. He jumped the gun. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's okay, it's okay, you can go there. It's okay. Thank you so much for the participation. Anyway, so the recent Gartner study shows that in general, Australian organizations spend about 29% of their marketing budget for Martech stack. That's way above the global average. On an average, the global number is somewhere between 22 to 25-ish, but the number is way high, right? So reflecting on these thoughts, we thought, hey, what better way to bring product leaders, growth leaders, and also CEOs on stage and talk about this, right? That's essentially what we want to discuss in the next panel today on the topic harnessing a unified Martech stack for driving enhanced efficiency and still driving data-driven growth. Please join me with a big round of applause as I welcome the panelists on stage. EJ Gamboa from Chief Growth Officer from Active Adventures, Austin Adventures, and now recently they have added Discovery Bicycle Tours. Please join me on stage. Thank you. Mr. Dipra, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder from Ping. And lastly, Calvin, VP of Data from Airtasker.
I'm EJ, Chief Growth Officer of Active Adventures and Austin Adventures. Active is based in New Zealand, Austin is based in the US. These are both two adventure travel brands, each with decades-long history, and combined offer over 80 fully guided, all-inclusive small group adventures in 6 continents around the world. And we recently acquired Discovery Bicycle Tours, which has effectively doubled our global product portfolio. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dipra. I'm the CEO of Ping. It's stealth on my LinkedIn, so I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I will because I'm here. We're looking to get rid of Visa and MasterCard. It's going to be a little bit controversial, but our aim is to reduce the cost of doing transactions for consumers and business by facilitating account-to-account transactions. That very, very small goal, just looking to disrupt a $4 billion industry, nothing much. That's a startup. It literally launched like 2 weeks ago. And then I've also been involved with a few other businesses, including body scanning and financial foreign exchange.
I think we should talk. My name is Calvin. I'm the VP of Data at Airtasker. So hopefully most of you in the room will have heard of Airtasker, but we are a local marketplace for connecting people who want things done with people who can do them. We operate in Australia, UK, and the west coast of the US at the moment, which is our growth market.
Fantastic. Cool. Calvin, I think because of proximity, I'll start with you, right? So we all heard a fantastic keynote from Sarah earlier today talking about the macroeconomic conditions and things, how it translates into consumer trends. So despite the macroeconomic condition, Airtasker grew significantly over the years. So can you help us understand a bit more about the role of data and personalization and how it impacted the result?
Straight to the numbers. So we just announced our FY24 results, and we did grow in around like 9.8%. Just to set the context, the market set us an objective at the end of last financial year to become cash flow positive this year and grow as well. So for the organization, data became the common language in which we would talk to each other. Naturally, numbers mean everything in a situation where every dollar, every part of your supply chain, and also every investment needs to have an impact to our final outcome. So specifically to the topic around digital channels and personalization, which is why we're here tonight, data became the fundamental driver in terms of where we direct our investment. So that could be personnel, it could be our tech stack, and more importantly, it was also where we invested our CRM resourcing and our paid marketing dollars. Airtasker is a non-traditional marketplace. We operate across 196 different categories. You type it, we attempt to match it to someone who can do it for you. So buying ads is a very, very complex endeavor for us, because I'll be like, crochet dolls, that's where I want you to spend $150 on today in Sydney. Our marketers freak out every time I approach their desk. But through a process and a framework of using data that tells us exactly what's in supply and demand, and predictive models to tell us what they will look like in the coming weeks, we were able to manage our way through carefully penny pinching our marketing dollars through that to drive the growth. There's a whole other part around enabling customer trust, but we can talk about that later.
Thanks. So EJ, when we talk about adventure, tourism, activities, it's all about experience, right? So right from the get-go, how do you drive a seamless experience with every touch point while still driving growth?
Yeah, big question. So one of the key differentiators of Active is that unlike most of our competitors, we actually try to be able to own the relationship with the customer from start to finish, unlike others which rely, for example, on travel agencies to be able to sell trips. So despite being a B2C company, we actually also have a very long customer journey. We have a high consideration product. We sell a premium experience with a higher price point, roughly around, like, say, $5,000 per person. So people tend to want to take their time to be able to decide whether or not to be able to take that trip. So what we do essentially is that we aim to be able to engage with the customer as early as possible in their journey, even when they're still trying to be able to learn more about the destination. And ultimately, we try to be able to deliver a very high-touch customer experience, and that comes in the form of like a very robust, I would say arguably one of the most robust nurture workflows in travel, which essentially extends from discovery to consideration to booking to pre-trip communications and to delivering an on-trip experience that basically takes into account all of the information and data from all those touch points to deliver an individualized trip to the guest, and then following that up with a post-trip communications plan that essentially allows us to be able to improve in the product from that feedback. So it works for us. Effectively, essentially, almost, no, not almost, 36% of our guests wind up repeating as a result of that.
Interesting stat, 36%. I think that's way above the industry average, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, cool. So Dipra, question to you. When we talk about digital transformation, right? You're the CEO currently, but you've come from a strong tech background. I'm sure you would have faced a lot of roadblocks in terms of getting buy-ins from stakeholders, getting motivating teams, bringing alignment within functions. So can you talk about some of the challenges that you've been through, or how did you overcome those challenges in ensuring that technology is in place?
Yeah, I mean, it helps a little bit that I am in the role that I'm in, which is the CEO. So generally speaking, within limits, if I want certain things to be done in a certain way, I don't see a lot of resistance. But I can tell you that can have its problems. So it's a body map, which is a 3D body scanning business that I started. Personalization, messaging, incredibly important, right? Because we want to be able to personalize. Once we figured out your body shape, figure out how you can improve that. And so I remember I've had this experience where I decided that I was going to make the decision on which marketing stack we're going to use. Didn't get my CMO involved. Didn't get my CTO involved. I was like, yeah, this, and the sales guy did a great, I hope he's not here. But anyway, the sales guy did a great job in selling it to me, right? And it turned out to be a horrible product. Because the problem is, like, when I'm making the decision, I mean, I'm showed the best parts, but, so right from the day I signed the contract, it was very hard because I just told the tech guy, I want you to integrate it. As he started to integrate it, he didn't like it. There were certain issues with it. Apparently, we couldn't do emails the way we wanted to do. We couldn't do transactional marketing the way we wanted to do. It isn't MoEngage, by the way, in case you're wondering. So it becomes really quite difficult. So with Ping, which is the business that we've just started, we've taken a different approach, right? So we've tried to have a strategic goal and say, okay, what are we trying to get to in the next, not today, in like 12 months? What are the targets that we want to achieve? And we've actually got the marketing people in the same room at the same time. And we've got my CTO sitting there at the very beginning going, okay, what do you think is going to be the roadblock to actually getting this implemented, right? Because irrespective of whether I like the price, which is generally what I tend to focus on, at the end of the day, if the people who are going to be using it don't like it and don't want to use it, it's somewhat irrespective of what I think, right? And so I think when you're doing transformation, I think it's important to just say, okay, what's my strategic goal? Why am I doing this? Right? So when it came to moving away from this crappy software that we'd signed on to, I actually just let my CMO say, I said, you go and find out which one you like. You make sure the CTO agrees to it. And then unfortunately, I guess I'll have to agree to the price, right? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the only input I have. And that turned out to be really, really quite powerful. So I think getting alignment from people at the very beginning and making sure there's a common vision as to why you want to have a software, I think it's really, really important.
And that was MoEngage, right? Just joking.
Now that you've set it up, no, it wasn't, but no.
Just joking, it's fine. Cool. Coming back to Calvin. So you spoke about data being the core of the organization, right? And for any organization, first-party data is critical. And data is good only if it is reliable, accurate, and something that you can trust. So can you talk a bit more about companies who are managing or setting up processes in place to figure out, hey, how do I go about this?
Yeah, I think trust is the key word out of that question. And like in a previous life before I went in-house, I used to work at Quantium. And we used to go to company after company and go, yeah, we'll help you set this up. And through that process, I observed like 3 big common themes. The first thing is you need to understand where your data comes from and where that trust, you understand how the data is generated from your business processes and your people. You have to trust that what is being recorded actually reflects the real world. We had one company where the data looked really good, like really clean. And we realized that the operational teams that were generating that data was just fudging it because their KPIs depended on this field being perfect. Like, hey, your response rate is perfect. Okay. I think the second bit is ensuring that the lineage of the data that you're collecting, processing, and ultimately feeding into your decisions is well understood. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first being that by understanding the lineage, you understand whether this data is trustworthy because there's first party within yourself and then there's first party at the very end, like you're sitting in front of the CEO. The second bit is, second part of that is really, can you use that data? Lineage gives you the right, the ability to understand whether you have the right to use that data, and especially in this age of consent. it's critical that you know whether you can make that decision around customer X. Because if you're ever unsure about that, you're going to get in trouble later on when you action it. I think lastly really is make sure that your business users, who are the ultimate consumers of this information, is involved right from the beginning, and then that process will then take you back to the very first step, and that just closes that loop because they are involved in the generation and the usage of the process or the data.
Fantastic. So, question to EJ, right? In your previous answer, you mentioned that to create a seamless experience, essentially you ensure that the touch point is across, be it onboarding, activation, or growth. You do a lot of things in that, right? So how do we ensure that the teams are not working in silos, or you are not investing on silo technology there, or having a unified platform essentially helps you drive a consolidated view there?
Yeah, the data fragmentation is a killer. Like it can absolutely cripple a business. So I can, off the top of my head, give you a couple of scenarios. For example, when you just look at a subset of data, and it will basically result in a false positive. So for example, for us, we are a lead-driven business, so people don't necessarily just basically book their trips online with very little consideration. Typically, like they download an itinerary or they submit an inquiry before they wind up converting. We have situations wherein like some people would download multiple itineraries. These are real people. They'd actually be going through multiple trips and downloading itineraries and so on. So there was this one recent example wherein like someone like over the course of 2 weeks downloaded an itinerary 10 times, And looking deeper, you'd think that, oh, that's a super hot lead. We totally need to convert that straight away. But looking deeper, this person's actually already booked their trip. They just didn't have like the PDF itinerary in their inbox, so they just wanted to be able to keep downloading it. So that's one false positive. Another is that in our business, it's very rare for someone to be able to wind up booking a trip when they already have one yet to travel on. So say, for example, they booked a trip for like next year, right? That typically is a customer that we wind up excluding from targeting and so on, because like they've have a very low likelihood of being able to book another trip before they've taken their current one. We actually have like huge outliers in our business wherein there's literally a person right now that has 14 upcoming trips with us. So again, like if you rely on just very small fragments of data to be able to make decisions without knowing the full picture, like in terms of like who the customer actually is, or like what all their interaction points actually are, you're going to wind up making very wrong decisions in terms of like how to engage that person. And I definitely don't want to piss off like that person who's booked 14 trips with us. Interesting.
So, Dipra, you briefly touched upon giving accountability to the marketing leaders to choose their tech stack, and then you come in and the commercial when the commercial is involved. But often, I'm sure a lot of marketing leaders in the room would be able to understand or relate with me, right? The first thing that happens in an economic downturn is cutting down marketing budgets, right? So, what's your I do understand why is it important, but can you shed some light on what are the things that they can do so that they don't have to optimize too much on the cost part of it, or just be prepared well in advance?
You should optimize on the cost if you can, right? I mean, that's going to be my first answer. So I think, again, if you have duplication, right? So Body Map, which was started 12 years ago, went through an exercise where we had, like a thing that we would send for transaction emails. So we'd pay SendGrid. We'd have then like MailChimp for a while. Then we had Twilio, and then we had all these separate things that, when you added them all up, got to a point that was expensive, but also gave very, very, very poor customer experiences, right? So when someone got a text, you didn't know because the email system wasn't in one place, right? And so you had a really segregated experience. And actually being able to consolidate those into one platform was of actual benefit, right? So I think often when people look at cost, I think cost is obviously, I mean, I think if you can justify, again, I'll come back to strategic objectives, right? So I think as a marketing, technology, finance, whatever it is, you've got to keep in mind what is the objective of the organization. If the objective of the organization is to provide a unified customer experience and to create an experience that touches people throughout various channels, you need that to be all integrated. That comes at the cost that it comes at, right? And you have to do that. So even if you could penny pinch by setting up your own Twilio and your own thing, you've then got to look at what the intangible costs are, which is your software developer's time. So the thing that I get pushed back by my CTO all the time is he always reminds me how much he's paid. And he says, well, if you're going to take my time to maintain this, and it's not just the setup, it's the maintenance, right? It's like, how much time and effort are you spending on maintaining every component? And that's where, software and technology today, it makes it really powerful. You can outsource that problem to someone else. And then, it makes life a lot simpler.
Can I jump in?
Please.
Like, speaking as the guy who has to do the penny pinching in the organization, it's also really useful to remember that a lot of the vendors who are providing you with the services like CDPs and CRMs, they are also under the same pressures as you are. And one of the things that helped us reduce our costs was we actually spoke with our CRM vendor, and we said, hey, look, we're paying 20% of our monthly cost is just shipping data points to do personalization to you. Like, surely there's some other way that doesn't involve me paying per data point. We had a really long chat with them, and they go, oh, well, we spoke with our tech team. Why don't we set up a direct sync between our analytics backend and your analytics backend, because that's free. So we ended up literally yanking out about 200 million data points that we ship out every month, shifting it to our analytics warehouse cost, which is like a fraction of the cost. And then we just proceeded with our crazy personalization program right now. So like having that chat enabled us to make that discounting possible. So the CFO held me to that cost saving, which I'm now spending on sending even more emails and notifications.
Fantastic. I think more than the cost-saving part, I think it's probably a better way to optimize the tech stack, pushing the data directly from your analytics platform to the CRM to get this thing done, right? Fantastic. So talking about data again, how can we not talk about AI in the current, age of group, right? So do you leverage AI or machine learning in any way, be it models or processes or whatever other stuff, to optimize your flow?
Just invite a data guy, and there's no way I won't mention AI. So fundamentally, Airtasker is a platform that takes in text and images and location, and we attempt you to match you and your task to anyone else that can do that. So that task in itself is fundamentally an AI problem, and we've been using in-house models to develop that matching engine. In a sense, we have been using an earlier version of LLMs before LLMs became mass market. Let's just park that for a little bit. Over the last year, we've been using all the advances that you can see in the market at the moment, specifically with the generation of content. One clear example for us is the replacement of using like stock images, which in the traditional workflow, our creative teams will go out, search for them, make a purchase, and the bill will just rack up at the end of the month and go, hey, Calvin, like, here's $5,000 because you really, really wanted that photo of someone painting a wall that is blue against the sea. When Midjourney and tools like that came out, we were able to go, well, let's invest. Let's just prompt it. So in that case, our creative teams spent about a week refining our prompts. And we now have a standard set of prompts that provide Airtasker Blue, our branding against every part of the image, and people with just 5 fingers painting walls. That reduced our bill from like the 4 digits per month down to just our subscription to Midjourney right now. On the other side, AI is perfect for understanding the content that customers are sending you. Like unconsciously, when they have a chat with us via support, when they type in a task, when they provide feedback to us against our traditional NPS scores and commentary, it's a great way of summarizing that without having the human effort to really understand it. So we use that across our operational processes just to reduce the mental load of having to understand a lot of text. And all of that gets packaged up across our organization right now, where we have deployments that go, hey, we used to do a lot of knowledge capture here. We write a lot in our knowledge base like Confluence. We have customer-facing knowledge bases for how you handle complaints and things like that. But now that just becomes a simple channel for us to just ask internally, how do we do it? And you just get a nice, reliable answer out.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, EJ, I asked this question a bit differently to Dipra earlier. So, while driving marketing initiatives forward, right, how do you drive alignment with functions like IT, procurement, or others who may not understand the nuances, but might become roadblocks or come in the way? So, how do you go about it? How do you drive alignment there?
The short answer is to be able to give them a common goal to strive for. So in our company, essentially, that goal is growth. So my role in the company actually oversees like both the marketing and IT teams, in part because like the singular mission for the company is to be able to drive growth. And each of those functions basically plays a role in that, right? So if you speak individually to the people within the marketing team and people within the IT team, data and so on and so forth, like they have different, KPIs, like in terms of like what their roles translate into, but they all ladder up to growth. So the question everyone needs to ask within the organization is that, is what you're doing going to drive the growth that we are looking for? And everyone needs to understand that obviously everyone contributes to that, but everything they do, whether it's something in the brand space or something within digital product or whatnot, it's all just a means to an end, and that end being growth. So I'm not necessarily saying that that has to be the same way for every other company, but there needs to be like a common goal that cuts through every different department in the business. A rallying cry.
Fantastic. So talking about goals, I think all of us have clear goals in terms of saying, hey, revenue, the rest of the other leading indicators will follow, right? While keeping that in mind, do you have a framework or do you have some kind of a process in place to say, hey, how do I go about now choosing the vendor who's the right fit for my goals, or who would be the right partner for me to take me to that next level? Any thoughts on that?
There are many different ways of approaching it, really. But like when dealing with vendors in that sense, like the first thing is being able to establish a common understanding. Like the issue with some vendors, I'm not calling anyone out here, is they're very much all about like the features and not the benefits. I don't really care about the features, like I don't care how the sausage is made. Ultimately, what I want is like what we get out of it, right? So if they're able to, after having a conversation with me and understand what I'm trying to be able to get at and tell me in no uncertain terms how I can get there, I don't really care about all the bells and whistles. Like I want to be able to understand like how best we can explore that and make it happen. So does that answer your question?
Fantastic. Cool. Dipra, back to you. You mentioned about, again, stressing on the point that you shared earlier, right? Giving the ownership and accountability to the marketing folks, or let them choose the best fit, because at the end of the day, they are going to be the end users. Apart from this, leaving the finance part outside of it, right? Do you have any recommendations on how do we manage or navigate this entire vendor onboarding flow?
Not really. My business is very small, right? So I've got like 20 people and at most and across the organizations. But it's again, I'd be lying if I said I've got lots of. My wife works for a very big government organization, and when I listen to her, it's a nightmare, right? So what advice I'll give you won't be applicable necessarily to a large organization where you have tenders and you have criteria that you've got to hit, irrespective of what marketing might think at the end of the day, right? But I think my only advice when it comes to vendor selection is, I think two things. One, think about your immediate needs, what you've got your problems today, and then think about what are you gonna have, what are you gonna forecast in 2 years, 3 years, because at the end of the day, the one thing I do know about implementations, and this is irrespective of whether it's a small business or a large business, once you've integrated with a particular piece of software, to deintegrate and reintegrate with a new one is incredibly hard. And that's coming from a 20-person organization, going to a, doesn't matter, thousands of people organization, right? Change management is ridiculously hard. So for us, actually, with Ping, we've actually started off with a unified stack so that we know from day one we are set for scale, right? We didn't, a little bit of penny pinching here and there, but at the end of the day, we know that if we want to scale this thing, to actually change it while the train is moving, it's almost impossible, right? So you're better off investing a little bit earlier. Now, that's easy for me to convince myself, right? I look at the mirror and I say, all right, I want to take on Visa, MasterCard, so I got to be ready for scale, right? So I think whoever's trying to convince your counterparts, I think the key is, again, as EJ said, what's the common goal? And then convince them that, hey, we're not going to do this every single year, right? We're not going to change this thing. So let's invest for growth and set ourselves up for the next 3 to 5 years, right? And I think if you can do that, then that should help.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Let me jump in. I just dug 2 integrations out of my organizations and replaced them, actually. And I think my advice would be to speak with your engineers early, like speak with those who actually will be doing your integrations. And then if you have them as part of the original vendor conversation, as part of the evaluation process, they can spot a lot of gotchas from a lot of the vendors where they go, hey, that is a little bit too invasive for our organization. And it doesn't necessarily say that end the conversation there, but they can engineer and build towards that midway point rather than having a really deep integration that you can't bail yourself out afterwards. In terms of costs, it just cost me 6 months of 2 engineering squads to dig out one tool. And then having learned that lesson, we are now investing we invested 3 months to build towards the middle. So when we do have to have that conversation again, I'm not going to be like trading half a year's of engineering time versus like a price rise in the next year.
Good. And EJ, what are some of the key KPIs that you track to ensure that, hey, you're on the right track? Or to supplement that, can you also talk about who's responsible for setting those KPIs?
Just in relation to like growth specifically, yeah. So honestly, I don't believe in like convoluted KPIs. Like I think the KPIs that everyone again should be striving for should be clear enough. Like so in terms of like who sets those KPIs, like if ultimately you want to be able to have the business succeed, then like ultimately the KPIs are the business metrics, the key business metrics that everything else has to be able to ladder up into. Now, when you get into very specific disciplines and functions within the business, obviously like those KPIs can change. So even within the growth team, for example, marketing would have different KPIs that still ladder up to growth. ICT would have different KPIs that ladder up to growth. But there are some commonalities that we need to be able to look at as an overall business. So things, for example, like profitability, repeat rate is big for us, like NPS, that allows us to be able to understand ultimately, especially considering that our business is one that relies very heavily on repeat customers, that we are delivering, a kick-ass product year after year after year. And as I said, like we do innovate that product based on the feedback that we get from customers. So that remains, at its very core, something that we need to be able to look at. So if customer feedback is strong, if the repeat rate is strong, then that means ultimately that we are going well as a business. But there are going to be a number of different leading indicators that basically show us like that information before they come to fruition. And we also obviously have a look at that.
I think that kind of nails it, right? So, Calvin, data is good, but insights are better, right? Would you agree?
Speaking my language.
Yes. So how does that translate into KPIs for when you work with other functional leads, say be it marketing, growth, or others from a data standpoint?
To go back to EJ's point, like it's all about having a common language and a common goal. At Airtasker, we have a mission map that we put in front of everyone at every possibility, and it's our overall company growth goal. And then there's all these other sub goals that layer upon it. Whether you're marketing, product, whether you're operations, everyone has a contribution to that goal. So when we talk about growth, or when I talk with my peers in the other parts of the business, every decision that we make layers up to, does this move the needle or not? Now, in a really simplistic sense, you go, well, if that doesn't make revenue, or if that doesn't bring an extra customer through my door, how do you ever like justify long-term investment? Because that is the pitfall of only asking, does it move the needle now? So we have a combination of two questions, actually. Does it move the needle now? And is it more likely to bring a customer that will generate even more value later on? So if we talk a lot about bringing posted tasks into our platform, but we also talk on a more long-term level about the growing our customer lifetime value. So 3 years ago, we set a goal within the organization to grow that from about 1.3 to 3. We still haven't hit that yet. So 1.3 tasks completed on our platform per person per year. We're now halfway through that journey, but that was only made possible because we asked everyone, especially marketing, and because they do bring the people through the door, and then they keep people inside the platform to move that out through every single part of the customer journey.
Fantastic. I think that kind of wraps up to my segment. Any question from the audience? Yes.
A question for Calvin.
Yeah. Question to Calvin. Yes. Go ahead, Herva.
I'm a very prolific Airtasker user. I do about I'm a very prolific Airtasker user. I do about, in last year, would have done about 80, 85 tasks. But coming to your, I actually have two set of questions. First is about, you said we want to increase the value that each customer provides. That would mean you want to increase the wallet value of each customer through Airtasker services. I stick to Airtasker for repetitive, low-skill, low-end task, which is I have to do a hedging, I would get Airtasker. If I have to do cleaning, I would go to Airtasker. If I have to do a big turnkey task, to do a solar installation, I have to set up my gym, then I would go for word of mouth. So how do you address this? It's like an Uber challenge, like everybody wants Uber X, and nobody wants Uber Lux, and they've not been able to migrate. The second point is about, because you spoke about machine learning, I understand the text and feeding the right service based on the search, but what about the partner? How are you capturing the partner noise? Because one of the things with Uber also we see is that after a point of time, the partner dissatisfaction comes in and the service collapses. So like if I want time sensitivity, I'd stick to Uber. But if I have no time constraint, I would go to Didi because they offer better discounts at all point of time. How are you managing what is the noise you're picking up from all the noise? What are the signals you're picking up that says that this particular set of partners do have a dissatisfaction? Are you picking up those noise? Because finally it's about the partner satisfaction also. I think when you get a large enough cohort, some point of time, all that signal becomes a noise. Because I think some of your partners do say, this really pinches. Yeah. Like, they just take too much of my money. So, yeah, those are the two questions. Thanks.
Cool. perhaps let me divide that into the first question, into the two parts that you just outlined. The first one is around how do we grow our customers' value, both to the company and our value to the customer. Because ultimately, our mission is to help people get things done. And to be honest, it doesn't matter whether you do 10 small value tasks or one very big task, that task is of equal value to our organization. Because ultimately, we're not only just helping you get the hedges trimmed, but we are providing employment to someone else on the other side. That said, there are a lot of things that we are working on to enable those high-value tasks to be trustworthy, to be frictionless, and also to be economical to both parties. Fees, in a world where no one wants to pay for anything, that is always going to be a sticking point for a two-sided marketplace like us. And it's a constant backwards and forwards for us as we attempt to redesign the marketplaces and the rules there to help balance what we charge as a platform and how we invest. I can't really cite any exact numbers, but the majority of what is charged on the fees goes back into the digital marketing platform spend, and we go and acquire tasks for those taskers. So I think when you mention partners, and you're talking about the taskers who do work for Airtasker, I'm kind of moving into the second part of your question now, where how you ask, how do we...
I'm interested in the data platform. I'm not interested in fees or
Yeah.
But how do you? So because all data flows have so much noise, and I'm trying to understand. Are you using machine learning to pick up signals where you are saying, okay, this is a bit of a concern?
Yeah. So on Airtasker, there's the task itself, and then there's the commentary that comes back. And also our task is provide overt signals, like they give us direct feedback all the time, a lot of it. And we also have engagement and disengagement of our platform. So we constantly watch the engagement for our taskers across all our marketplaces. So when we see things like offer rates, so the number of engagement points with our tasks drop, we start asking ourselves, what is the cause? We look at both the qualitative data that is constantly gathered by our product teams and our operational teams, and we also go out and look at the broader marketplace. Competition is one of the biggest sticking points that we recently got from those signals, because as the macroeconomic conditions dampen a little bit, taskers are finding it harder to win work because there's just, frankly, more people competing for the same job. We address that through our different channels, but there's a lot of noise, but we do pick that up by monitoring both the hard metrics that we have established across the company, like engagements, offers per task, win rates for taskers, amounts that are earned by taskers, as well as the qual. And we actively ask our teams to go out and go, hey, we see some disengagement from this segment of the tasker base. Please go out and ask them what's going on. And we bring that back using ML.
Thanks, Calvin. In interest of time, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And enough of data, Martech, and technology and stuff. So I'll request Michael to join back on stage to lead the entertainment panel. Thank you.